Hey everyone, my name is Yarrow and you're listening to the Daydream Rose podcast. Thank you so much for joining me for another solo episode. I was really surprised to get so much positive feedback to the last few that I recorded. I kind of imagined that people were more into interviews, but I think actually in myself I also find that I really like listening to people ramble and reflect on what's happening this year. So yeah, I'm happy that you seem to enjoy that too. Thank you so much for your feedback and your reviews and for reaching out. So today I'm going to talk about how I'm just having a really long pyjama party by myself, which I like to think of as a very life-giving euphemism in 2020. I want to begin with some updates. So if you haven't heard yet, I'm offering weekly creative space sessions live on Zoom every Saturday through winter to patrons. So this is an hour where we begin by checking in, lighting a candle, making some tea, and then we just create something together. Some people write, sometimes people work with the journaling prompts that I offer, some people knit or sew. You can do whatever you like. It's just about being together and kind of, seeing some other human faces and having that little gentle accountability to be creative at the end of the week. So if you would like to join that, you can find the link to become a patron in the show notes, and we would love to have you. There's no pressure to show up for all the sessions, so it's really, the idea is that you can drop into them whenever feels good for you and just utilize them as you wish. And there's a ton of other things that you get as a patron as well. For example, you get access to a year-long embodied magic program where you get a monthly ritual kit that's themed, where you have tarot spreads and journaling prompts and recorded meditations and movement practices and all kinds of cool stuff. You also get access to recordings of past workshops. For example, at the beginning of the year, I ran one on tarot as a light in the dark. I also have some recorded zine making classes. And then you get access to all my downloadable zines and my book, an ebook copy of rituals, simple and radical practices for enchantment in times of crisis. So it's a lot of stuff, and I hope you will enjoy that, and it really supports me in my work and keeping this going to have some patrons, so thank you. Okay, so one more update actually. I sold a bunch of linocuts this week. That was really fun. So it was my birthday on Tuesday, and I have had this long repressed wish to be an artist and work more with my hands and offer something to people that I can actually post to them. And I think so far in my business that hasn't been possible because I haven't really had the living space to handle shipping and stock and all that. But now that I'm much more rooted in Scotland and have my own place here, it suddenly becomes possible. And I have a little printing press which I gave myself for my birthday. It's not massive, it's just A4, but I really love it so much, and I've been dancing yesterday, dancing in my underwear, making prints, and it was super fun. And I sold the first batch to raise money for the local food bank. It was a design that's called Made as Time Changes with a butterfly and black ink, and that print run has now sold, but I'm planning to make more next week, and you can see when those available on Instagram and probably first on my newsletter. So if you want to know about that, you can sign up for my newsletter at yarrowmagdalena.com. It comes out of once a month, so it's not too intense, I hope. Okay, I think that's it for updates. Whew. Yeah, so having a really long pyjama party by yourself, what does that mean? I've been living alone through the pandemic, and I've been more or less in isolation for 8 months now. And it was when I first came back from Germany. I'd been helping my mom, who's chronically ill, move houses at the end of February, and when I returned to the UK, I developed a fever, so I went into isolation. I wasn't tested at the time because that wasn't a thing, and so that's how I kind of had like a bit of a head start before lockdown with isolation. And some restrictions have been loosened over the summer here in Scotland, but if I'm really honest, I haven't made use of them in some ways, or in big ways at least. I have seen a few friends in August outside who were able to come from the city, which was really cool. And I am in a support bubble with 2 friends who live together locally here, so we do get to see each other about once a week. And otherwise I'm getting my food delivered, which is, I think, just more of a thing in the UK than in other places, but it's just normal supermarket food or food from local makers, and they deliver. And so that's that's mostly been what I've been doing. I've not been traveling or doing much. I went to the city twice in the summer for going on distance walks with friends, and that was really cool. But otherwise I'm really just home and enjoying walks with my dogs and the landscape and being in the garden. And it feels lonely sometimes, of course, and there's only so much we can get through calls with people or being on Zoom. And I'm also just obviously noticing myself that there's a limit to how much time I actually want to spend on screens. I know many people feel that way. And I really miss touch. I really miss just hugging people. I miss going to places where I know I'll meet lots of people. I'm not really at all a social butterfly, but just going to, I don't know, like a poetry reading or something with a friend and knowing that you'll maybe know another few people in the audience. I really miss that kind of thing. And sitting closely next to other people in a restaurant or running into someone in the street and hugging them. Those are things I think I'm really going to treasure in the future. I also want to say that I am really super lucky in lots of ways. I have a home I really love. I have lots of introvert training in my life. I feel like I've been good at being inside all my life. I have 2 cute dogs, and I have a landscape that's accessible here to me. I'm not living in a city, I'm living in a town, and I can walk 10 minutes and then I'm in the woods and by a river and a lake. And on a clear day, I can even see the sea in the distance, and that feels really beautiful and spacious. And so I think seeing the season change here also gives me a sense of time passing, which is something that I've really need to kind of consciously hold on to this year. I think there's a lot of just losing track of time and missing things and being really forgetful and swimming in a sea of news and refreshing the feed and trying to pull away from that and having movement practices and reading books, but it's not easy. It's something that I think I really need to work towards too. And then there's the uncertainty as well. That's difficult to... This week I've been coming across a few new podcasts that I recently started listening to and really enjoy. And I listened back to episodes that were recorded in spring, in like March, April. And just hearing people reflect on that time then made me remember how I was conceptualizing what was happening in spring and how, there were all these ideas flying around of how we might have a vaccine in the summer, or how there might not be a second wave by some kind of miracle, or how we might deal with this for years and just go in and out of lockdowns. And there's still so much that we don't know. As I'm recording this on the 12th of November, it looks good that we might have a vaccine early next year. But obviously it's going to take time to roll that out. And also I'm really worried that it's not going to be distributed in a way that's fair to everyone around the planet. So there still is a ton of uncertainty. And then there's also the sense that there is no way really to get back to normal. I think obviously we're realizing that the way we've been living isn't sustainable in lots of ways, but also a lot of things that we have taken for granted before all of this happened might just not be there anymore. I know a lot of small businesses have needed to close down permanently, which is heartbreaking. So some of the things that we have considered normal before the pandemic, we might not be able to return to. Lots of people have lost friends or family. Some people have long COVID and are still struggling with symptoms and might just really take more time to recover from that. And I think it's important to name that and allow for some grief around those things in a way that feels doable and accessible. Something around grief that I often talk about is making a little grief altar as a starting point in your home, maybe just like a candle in the corner of a windowsill, or just like reading a poem in the morning to start the day, and just making little pockets of space for feelings. And yeah, I think that looks differently for everyone, of course, and feelings can be complicated and always easily accessible, but yeah, making space I think is really important. I'm also thinking about what it's going to look like when we do eventually transition out of lockdowns completely. So in the UK, England at the moment is in lockdown. Germany is in a light version of lockdown as well. I'm talking about Germany specifically because that's where I'm from and know more about than I know about other European countries. But in Scotland, we have a 5-tier system, and where I live, we're currently in tier 2, which isn't actually super restrictive, but I feel that I don't need to make use of more freedoms right now in terms of, what I need. The only thing I really was hoping to do is to be able to invite people that live in a city to go on walks with me. So I have a few friends who have cars, and I was hoping they might be able to visit, to go on a distance walk, but they are actually in another zone, and so they can't leave that zone, and so that's not happening. But yeah, that is a little rumble of where we are at. But anyway, I'm thinking about what it's going to look like to transition out of that. And obviously I don't have a timeline for that in mind, but I just know myself, like I am sometimes anxious, and it really helps me to plan for things and think about how I can prepare. And I really miss my family, for example, and if I'm imagining that maybe in spring I'll be able to go and see them, which would mean going to the city, to Edinburgh first, and then taking a train to London, then taking the Eurostar through the tunnel to Brussels, and then a train from Brussels to Hamburg. So it will be like a 20-hour trip, I think. And that really kind of freaks me out because there's a lot of traffic, it's a lot of changing modes of transportation, crossing many cities, and then all of a sudden seeing people that I haven't seen in a year, and like really missing that and wanting that, but also kind of feeling a bit overwhelmed at the thought of that. And so yeah, I'm thinking about what I actually want back in my life when this is over. And I think that's a really powerful question in a way to ask. So much of what we consider just a normal part of our lives has been stripped away in a way, and so it left like a blank space for us. And I want to make sure that I'm not just mindlessly filling that back with stuff, but that I'm really thinking about what feels good and what I do want to invite back into my life. And I'm not clear on that at all. I'm just thinking out loud, I guess, and want to do some more journaling about that in the next coming weeks. But I want to come back actually to thinking and talking about what it means to have a really long pyjama party by myself right now. I think that expression just feels really sweet to me right now, because the next few months, that is the thing I know for sure, that is certain, and not going to be necessarily easy. They're not going to be social. I don't think that we'll have a vaccine very soon. So I'm probably going to spend Christmas by myself, spend my birthday this week by myself, and framing this as a really long pyjama party by myself has felt cute, even though there's also, of course, some cynicism underneath that, I guess. But it's fun. And I want to share a few things that on my pyjama party feel fun right now. I'm trying to imagine sometimes that I have an introvert battery that can be charged for the long term. So I'm just thinking back on all these moments in my life where I was like invited to a birthday party that felt really overwhelming, or like in my 20s standing at an office party feeling super awkward, or staying at a club when I used to do that kind of stuff, and feeling really tired but feeling like I want to be a cool kid and stay up past midnight. And now looking back at that time and like giving my past self a hug from this moment in time, where I have such an abundance of being in my pajamas at home and cuddling my dogs and just recharging and really healing that. And also imagining that maybe this time is going to build up a battery for a future time where I'll want to be social again. I have a feeling that's not how it works, and that I might not be able to store this kind of energy long term, but who knows? Let's see. I also really love the creative space sessions so much. Those were initially just a 6-week program that was going to end last week, and then I decided to keep going through winter because I know I enjoy them so much myself, and it feels really good to be able to see other people and check in a really low energy way and then just make stuff together. I think making stuff always just makes me feel really good, and like the print making this week that I've done was so delightful, really. I also really love observing nature every day and really seeing the change of season. And I think that's a beautiful thing to do regardless of where you live. Maybe if you're in a big city, you can find one tree that you go to visit every day down the road and just see how it changes through the seasons. I love taking pictures. I don't have a smartphone anymore. Well, I do have a smartphone, but I don't use it. It's just in my drawer, and I have I have like a boring Nokia button phone now, and then I got my old bridge camera out, which I haven't used in years because I had an iPhone 6 until this year, and I kind of slowed down, and then eventually wasn't working well anymore, and I was really thinking about whether or not I wanted to replace this. And I think smartphones are incredibly expensive, and we just kind of take for granted that that's what they cost, and they are made in conditions that aren't great. I also get a sense that they're really not made to last, so I was like, actually I don't want to replace it. And I got this Nokia phone, which, in an ethical sense, I totally know isn't perfect either, but it's an outdoor phone, so it can fall down, and I hope it's going to last me a really long time. And I really found that I don't need to have a smartphone. I'm listening to iPods podcasts on an old iPod, and then I use Instagram on my computer, and my phone is just my phone for texting and sending voice messages, and that's it. And that feels really relaxing, and it's also allowed me to come back to my actual camera and just enjoying this process of taking pictures where I'm looking through the lens, which is so different than looking at the screen. I find just the way we engage, I think, with visual culture has changed through Instagram and through our phones so much, and I want to kind of go back to the basics of image making. One idea I have, for example, is to take a series of pictures of the sky outside my window, just taking the same angle every day at the same time and seeing how different the sky is each day, and really kind of engaging with the depth and detail of that, because that is something that is available to me from the inside, and I think it also just speaks to the introversion of this time, and it might be something cute to make into a zine at the end of it, and to maybe make some notes layered with each picture each day. I'm not really sure yet, but that's what I'm thinking about. I also really love reading secondhand books and asking everyone I love what their favorite books are, and trying to kind of really widen my horizon in book reading. I will say that with that I don't always have the depth of attention span to really, read a book in a short period of time. I have a big stack on my bedside table at the moment, and I kind of dip in and out of them on my pyjama party, and I allow myself to just be realistic with my capacity to take stuff in. And also questioning how much I fill that capacity in with being on Instagram, which might not actually be what I want to do. But I think last week with the election, for example, there was just so much refreshing the news and really noticing that I couldn't fully sit still with a book and really enjoy that, which is a shame, and which is something I really want to reclaim. A really big part of my pyjama party is also watching Dawsons Creek, I'm excited to say, because it's back on Netflix, and fucking hell, it makes me so happy. It's absolutely ridiculous. It came out in Germany when I was about 13, and it was every Sunday in the afternoon there was a new episode. That was a time where you couldn't just binge on something. And yeah, I really loved it. It really shaped my understanding of relationships and dating, and what it was going to be like to be an older teenager. And now I look at it and I'm like, wow, like it's so dramatic, and the acting is weird, and like the things that feel so so important and consuming to these characters are really, in the greater scheme of life, definitely still important. I don't want to deny in any way the teenage experience, and I think it's important and just part of life that we feel that way at that time. But wow, how much things shift, hey? And I think there's something really therapeutic in watching it now as an adult and seeing just the change of time. And it's funnily, the coming out of Dawsons Creek on Netflix is also coinciding with my therapist having a 6-week break. So I'm kind of telling myself that I'm watching Dawsons Creek as an alternative to being in therapy on Tuesday mornings, which is hilarious. But yeah, there's a lot to process there. And I think what I find comforting is just seeing that change really is possible. Like thinking now that I'm 35 about my 40s and 50s and how I will look back at this time and be like, oh wow, like there's so much that I had no way of anticipating or even dreaming of, but it has changed, and that's so cool. Yeah, that's my little ramble on things that give me joy. But I want to ask you, like, how would you set your home up for a pyjama party with friends? And can you set yourself up in that way just for yourself if you're isolating by yourself this winter? Is that maybe a fun way of framing it? I also really love reading young adult novels. There's a shop in Scotland called Categories Books, which is an amazing shop run by queers for queers, and they send me books. I have a subscription where I get the surprise book each month, and yeah, that's, maybe that's something that you can do and support your local bookshops that way. Maybe you also want to do some writing about what it will look like to transition back into normal life, in air quotes, and what you actually want to bring back in after your long pyjama party. And yeah, what's important to you? What are you really missing? I would love to hear if you want to share. Maybe comment on Instagram or send me a message or something. I'm really interested in hearing how other people frame this time for themselves. And yeah, also looking towards the holidays. I'm going to take 3 weeks off over Christmas and New Year's, which is really precious to me, and it's not something I've ever done in the last 5.5 years of running my business. But it feels important because this year has been so intense, and I really want to make sure that I get time with a really clear head to just kind of drop into my own space and reflect and process, and maybe record the odd episode of me rambling like this one, but not putting too much on my plate, which I know is a luxury, and I hope that everyone gets a chance to do that in some way as well. But if that means also that you might spend the holidays by yourself, is that maybe going to be a really big pyjama party? And is there anything that you can do right now to plan for that? Like maybe wish for a really great pyjama, or maybe something, this is something I've done. I've rearranged my bookshelf by priority of reading, so that in times when I feel really tired, I can just kind of show up there and see all the books I want to reread in one row and feel excited about them, even if I might not immediately have the energy to actually do that. But those are things that I guess we do to keep ourselves busy, hey? Yeah, I think that is the end of my little ramble. I would love to have you at the creative sessions on Saturdays if you like. If you want to become a Patreon, that would be sweet. If not, that is totally okay as well. Maybe you want to leave a review, that would be also super sweet. And just come and say hi, that would be nice. I'm sending lots of love your way. Thank you.